They lived side by side for over 30 years. He was a humble auto mechanic. She, a graduate of the Wharton School of Business. He worked night shifts so she could study. She promised everything they were building was forever. But one forgotten envelope, a single line on a prescription, and then came a silence too loud to ignore. He didn't ask questions. He started observing. And by the time she thought she had everything under control, he was already packing her suitcase. Not out of anger, but out of pain. Out of the realization that betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it smiles, and sometimes it holds another man's hand in the shadows of a restaurant. Her career didn't collapse because of a failed presentation, but because someone took her materials right from under her nose. 5 years passed, and the silence was broken again. But this time, not by her. A stranger's family stood at the door. A little girl caught between life and death, and only one name appeared on her birth certificate. His, even though he hasn't been able to have children in years. Or has he? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. For the past 4 months, Ophelia had been steering a high-stakes initiative. Though she wasn't the originator of the project, the responsibility for its success fell squarely on her shoulders as the appointed lead. The outcome was crucial not just for the Covington Group's trajectory, but for her own future as well. A misstep wouldn't simply be a career setback, it could spell disaster for the entire organization. Ophelia had earned her bachelor's at Albright, followed by an MBA from Wharton. No one in our family ever questioned her brilliance. Compared to her, my path had been much simpler. I went into the trades straight out of high school and built a career as a mechanic. I'd stayed in that lane for more than 20 years. It was steady, honest work. Work that brought a quiet pride. It also paid enough to get Ophelia through college and raise our 2 kids. We never splurged, but we never went without what we truly needed either. Just 3 months after our wedding, both of us still just teenagers, Ophelia learned she was pregnant. The early days weren't easy. We moved in with my parents, who still lived in a large house that had emptied out as my siblings left. The upside? Extra hands to help with the baby while Ophelia juggled her studies. Balancing motherhood and a degree wore her down, but she persevered, finishing her undergraduate program in 6 years. Meanwhile, I grabbed every overtime shift I could. When Ophelia completed her MBA, we finally settled into a place of our own. She received offers from several top firms, but each one came with a relocation demand. I was willing to pack up and go, but she wanted to stay near our hometown. That's why she chose Covington. It offered stability, good compensation, and potential for growth. Whatever Ophelia committed to, she gave it everything. She immersed herself in her career with unwavering focus. Her big presentation was set for Thursday at the upscale Reason Hotel in Philadelphia. I scheduled time off to support her, though my main contribution was preparing meals. Honestly, I never fully grasped the details of her job, and didn't feel I had to. The corporate lifestyle had never appealed to me. Ophelia mentioned that executives would be flying in from Europe, Asia, and South America, all on Covington's budget. Given the company's already strained finances, it struck me as a gamble. This wasn't just about her performance. It had implications for over 200 employees. Everything seemed to be progressing smoothly until Tuesday night. That evening, Ophelia walked in wearing a tailored gray suit and a crisp white blouse. She laid out her belongings meticulously across the guest bed. She wasn't a stickler for chores, but when it came to work, she was meticulous. I noticed she'd packed elegant lingerie, though I said nothing. Next to her business clothes were cocktail dresses for the evening mixers. I normally avoided corporate events, but this time, I was ready to tag along if she asked. She thanked me, then gently declined. Earlier that day, she'd packed all her presentation materials into her Volvo's trunk, checking and rechecking. Wednesday was her prep day, Time to network and get settled. That night, while she showered, I made a choice I'd soon regret. Wanting to help, I began arranging her things. As I moved her makeup bag, a white envelope fell out. It was from a pharmacy we didn't usually use. Inside were 10 pills with brief, unusual directions. Take one now, another in 12 hours if necessary. The prescription bore her name. I was puzzled. At first I assumed it was for anxiety, but the instructions didn't match anything like that. I slipped it back into place and tried to calm my racing thoughts. I couldn't bring myself to ask her outright. It would mean confessing I'd snooped through her things, which I wasn't proud of. After she fell asleep, I sat down at the computer and typed in the drug's name. Within minutes, I had my answer. I crawled into bed next to her, but I didn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop churning. The pills were emergency contraception, and I'd had a vasectomy a decade ago. By morning, I felt hollowed out. I wandered the neighborhood, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. It didn't. When I came home, a quiet dread hung over me. Our son, Elliot, was stationed with the Navy in San Diego. Our daughter, Sarah, had just relocated to Dallas with her new husband. Now it was just Ophelia and me. I missed our children, but I had looked forward to this next chapter with her. She had been my only love. But now, everything I thought I knew felt uncertain. If Ophelia had been unfaithful, she'd hidden it flawlessly. I'd never checked her phone, never monitored where she went. I never had a reason to. I'd trusted her completely. When I returned, she was in the kitchen. "Where have you been? Want some eggs or something?" she asked casually. "Just coffee," I replied, keeping my tone low. She tilted her head, sensing something. "You okay, babe? It's just 3 days. You could come along, but honestly, you'd be bored out of your mind." "I'm not going," I said, "but I hate being here alone. I worry when you're not around." She smiled softly. "You're sweet. I'll be fine. I'm mostly at the hotel today, just prep work and socializing. Tomorrow's jam-packed from start to finish. I won't even have time to eat. I'll be home Friday afternoon. We'll have a great weekend, just you and me. You know what I mean." Her words were meant to reassure me, but they didn't. "I hope you can see why this is hard for me," I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "I'm just a guy who fixes cars, and I ended up married to this amazing woman whose career is really taking off. Sometimes it feels like your job means more to you than our family does." She spun around to face me, her expression tight. "Don't do that," she said sharply. "I've always respected what you bring to this family. You've raised 2 great kids. You were there for me when I went back to school. You're a wonderful partner and a great dad, and we'd be lost without you. Don't ever forget that," she added, starting to gather the breakfast plates while I finished the last sip of my coffee. "Should I give you a ring later?" I asked. She shook her head. "Better not. I'm turning off my phone and unplugging the one in the room. I need to catch up on some sleep, but I'll call when I can." I helped her load the last few bags into the trunk as she reviewed her travel checklist with her usual attention to detail. The drive to the Reason Hotel would take her about 3 hours. I stood on the porch as she pulled away, suppressing the urge to ask about the pills. I stayed out there long after the car disappeared, overtaken by a heavy sense of uncertainty. I felt small, like I was in a world that no longer made room for me. Just a small-town guy married to someone who had become something else entirely. Had I missed the signs? Were they there all along and I simply looked away? As I buttoned up my shirt, the landline rang. "Hey, honey," Ophelia chirped. "Just letting you know I got here fine. No issues on the road, barely any traffic. I'll ring you later tonight." Her tone was light, cheerful even, but something inside me had shifted. I knew I wouldn't be able to hear her voice the same way anymore. "I'm in room 714 if you need to get in touch. I might also swing by my parents or drop in on my brother." "Okay. Love you," she said. "Yeah," I replied, but the line was already dead. I didn't rush to Philadelphia. I made a few stops along the way, including grabbing a cheesesteak, I figured I'd need the fuel. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. When I eventually reached the hotel, I stayed parked in the garage, unable to make myself move. My phone rang and pulled me back into the moment. "Jackson, everything's settled. I'm heading down to meet some folks for dinner," she said. "You didn't leave anything behind, did you?" "No, I've got it all. Everything I need for tomorrow's presentation is in my room. Are you sure you don't need anything?" "I'm good. Try to take it easy, Jackson. I'm shutting my phone off now." "I'll check in with you tomorrow," I said, forcing a small laugh. "Don't think of this as fun, Jackson," she said bluntly. "It's work." And with that, she ended the call. I wandered through the lobby, blending in with the crowd. The hotel was buzzing, full of people, busy restaurants, packed conference rooms. I moved around easily, unnoticed. I snagged a brochure from the front desk to get a better idea of the layout, pretending to be just another guest. I didn't have a plan in mind. If I ran into Ophelia, I'd figure it out on the fly. A large screen listed the event schedule and room bookings. Curiously, there was no listing for the Covington group that evening. Ophelia had told me she'd be staying in the hotel all night, but now I wasn't so sure. There were 3 places to eat: a family-style place, a casual diner, and a high-end lounge. Knowing her tastes, I skipped the family option and checked out the casual spot. She wasn't there. I had better luck in the upscale venue. She was tucked away in a shadowy booth at the back, an ideal spot for privacy. She wore a striking black dress with a plunging neckline, her pearl necklace glinting under the dim lights. She looked radiant. The people at her table seemed taken with her. I recognized a few colleagues, but the man seated across from her was unfamiliar, though his face sparked something in my memory. The lounge wasn't crowded. I easily slipped into a nearby table. Each one had a candle in a glass holder. I blew mine out, telling the waiter it bothered my eyes. I ordered my usual chicken dish and let him refill my coffee multiple times. "Hey," I said casually, nodding toward the man at Ophelia's table. "He looks familiar. Do you know who he is?" The server leaned closer. "That's Nolan Whitaker. He's on the city council. Word is he's prepping for a congressional run." "That his wife with him?" He shook his head. "Nope. First time I've seen her. He usually reserves that booth for, well, important meetings, if you know what I mean." I offered a polite nod and asked for the check. I'd never seen Ophelia behave that way around another man, so engrossed, so attentive. It wasn't overtly romantic, not inappropriate per se, but it was definitely more than professional. As I left, they were uncorking their second bottle of wine. And then it all made sense. Why she'd packed that expensive lingerie. I discovered a secluded corner in the hotel lobby where I could sit unnoticed. Roughly 10 minutes passed before I saw them emerge from the restaurant. Ophelia's hand laced tightly with his as they made their way toward the elevators. My gaze stayed fixed on the display above the doors, tracking the numbers as they rose. When the elevator halted at the 3rd floor, a flicker of relief passed through me. She hadn't taken him to her suite. But then, the elevator didn't continue upward to the 7th floor. That's when the sinking feeling hit. I knew she'd gone to his room instead. I stayed put in the lobby, watching the elevator cycle through floors as guests came and went. An hour dragged by. Ophelia never returned. Eventually, I left the building, went to the car, and retrieved my unused suitcase. I approached the front desk with calm persistence. Even though I had proof of being her husband, it wasn't easy convincing them to issue a key card. After they rang the room and received no answer, they finally relented. Key in hand, I took the elevator up to room 714. I didn't switch on the lights after stepping inside. I sat quietly in the shadows for more than an hour, making sure she wouldn't walk in mid-process. Once I felt secure, I began packing. Every article of clothing, every personal belonging, nothing was left behind. Her prescription bottle still sat on the dresser, 10 pills inside. On the desk were her materials for the next day's presentation, neatly arranged. I packed all of it, 24 custom-bound packets, 20 regular folders, the projector, and her laptop. Everything went into the suitcase. I grabbed her handbag and phone too. She'd only carried a small clutch with her, likely just for makeup. After a final sweep, I placed her car keys and my wedding ring on the dresser. Aside from those two items, the room was stripped clean. I made my way down to the garage with both bags without trouble. Within 20 minutes, I was cruising northbound on the highway. Around 3 a.m., my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I answered. "Jackson," she said. "Where are you?" "I'll be home soon," I replied. She said nothing. I waited, remembering how salespeople say whoever speaks first loses. The pause stretched out long enough to feel eternal. Finally, she spoke again. "I'm sorry." Her voice was quiet. She didn't ask anything. Then she ended the call. I turned off the phone. She must have returned to her own room. Later that morning, she was supposed to present at a major meeting, one that might have earned her a promotion and stabilized the company's trajectory. I stashed both suitcases in the attic above the garage. By that point, it didn't seem to matter anymore. I packed up my essentials, clothes, toiletries, and by the time the banks opened, I'd drained every account in my name. I had enough tucked away to get by temporarily, though I knew I'd need work soon. I spent a couple of days wandering the Luray Caverns, then rented a modest room outside Whiteville. That Sunday, I called Sarah. She already knew. Ophelia had confessed. She'd admitted to the affair. I had found out. I walked away, and Ophelia lost her job. I felt some guilt, but it was a consequence she'd have to carry. By Monday afternoon, I'd already found work. Handymen are always needed. Weeks passed. Sarah told me Ophelia had moved back in with her parents. Later, I heard from Elliot, calling from San Diego. He didn't criticize his mother, and I appreciated that. That was it. No big finale, no dramatic closure like in the movies. Just life, moving ahead in quiet, steady increments. A new rhythm took shape. I talked to Sarah at least once a week, and Elliot and I began exchanging emails now and then. Sarah kept in touch with Ophelia but never gave me details about her life. I never filed for divorce. As far as I knew, neither did she. I got a Tennessee driver's license, updated the Subaru's registration, and started going out to a local bar occasionally. In time, I began casually seeing two different women. Both were fine with keeping things simple, which suited me well. It all feels like another lifetime now. Eventually, Ophelia stopped occupying my thoughts. The Subaru began acting up after passing the 2,000-mile mark. One evening, sipping a beer, I realized 5 years had passed since I left. I stayed in close contact with both kids. Sarah now had 2 children of her own and had started nudging me to come visit. Elliot had almost gotten married but called it off just before the wedding. I worked 6 days a week, using Sundays to recover from Saturday nights. So when someone knocked on my trailer door at 6 in the morning on a Friday, I was not in the mood. I opened the door in my boxers. A woman stood there, looking as awkward as I felt. The man beside her looked completely unfazed. "Usually I'd wear pants," I said dryly. "But surprise guests like you don't get that courtesy." "We're looking for Jackson Carver," the man said. I didn't know either of them. "I don't know you," I replied. "My name's Darren Caldwell. This is my wife, Elizabeth. We're hoping you can help us with something." "Not at this hour," I said. "If it's car trouble, try the mechanic down the road." They didn't leave. They just stood there, staring. "This isn't about your job," the man began. "It's more personal than that. Mind if we come in?" Inside, my trailer was a mess. Papers scattered, dishes piled up. I wasn't used to having company, so cleaning had never been a priority. Even women I dated usually preferred to meet at their places. "Make yourselves comfortable," I said, moving toward the back. "Let me put on some pants." I left the door open behind me and grabbed a shirt. "Want some coffee?" I offered, tugging it on. "It'll be ready in 10, I added. Still, they said nothing. After a moment, the woman spoke. "We adopted a daughter. She's 4. She needs a bone marrow transplant. We're hoping you might be a match. We're willing to compensate you, the man added quickly. I gave them a look. You're trying to buy my bone marrow? It sounded ridiculous, but they weren't kidding. Their tone was serious, even desperate. Okay, I said, softening. Tell me more. The best chance is a partial match from a biological relative. Based on what we know, you're our strongest lead. I think there's a misunderstanding, I told them. When was she born? She turns 5 in July, the woman answered. Her name is Emily Caldwell. I blinked, taken aback. That can't be. I had a vasectomy 15 years ago. Biologically, I couldn't have fathered her. Then why is your name on her birth certificate? She asked. I've got no idea, I said. You'll have to ask her mother. There was a pause. And her mother is Ophelia Lane Carver. The name landed like a gut punch. I froze. Damn. I remembered the pills she'd given me back then. If I hadn't taken them, this child might not exist. I understand now, I said quietly. Sorry for how I reacted. I'll do whatever I can to help. The man leaned forward. Why isn't Ophelia a donor? She's too sick, the woman explained. Her liver is failing. Doctors have ruled her out for surgery. They've given her less than 6 months. I was floored. That's impossible. She used to be so healthy. Why won't they take her consent? They say she can't legally give it. You mean she's not mentally competent? They didn't answer. Not long ago, these people had meant nothing to me, but now I felt responsible. Do I have any other children who could be a match? I asked. Maybe, the woman said, but we truly believed you were our best hope. Why not track down her real father? We thought it was you. Ophelia never mentioned anyone else, and now she's too sick to clear it up. Most of what we know came from the agency. I poured some coffee and tried to think. Where are you from? Westchester, Pennsylvania. I nodded. Here's the deal. I'll tell you who I think the real father might be, but you've got to promise to go after him, full force. He'll deny it, maybe even try to bury you in legal threats. But if you push hard enough, maybe guilt will do the rest. Who is he? The man asked. Nolan Whitaker. He's campaigning for the Senate. He'll do anything to avoid a scandal. They exchanged a look, hope flickering between them. We can work with that, the man said firmly. Before they left, I gave them contact info for Sarah and Elliot, just in case. Then I asked about Ophelia. I had a feeling I'd be in Pensacola before they even made it back to Pennsylvania. I cleaned up, trimmed my hair, put on a decent shirt. Despite everything Ophelia had done to shake up my life, I wanted to look presentable when I saw her again. Finding her place wasn't hard. Her trailer was newer than mine, in better shape. An old Volvo sat in the driveway, one tire flat, the windshield cracked like a spiderweb. The woman who answered wasn't Ophelia. She looked worn out, early 50s, maybe late 40s. Well, she said, eyeing me. Didn't expect you. She introduced herself as Rachel Adams. Come on in. I stepped inside. I came to see Ophelia. She pointed to a brass urn on a nearby shelf. She's right here, Jackson. I stared at it, frozen. Mind if I grab a beer? I muttered. Rachel explained that Ophelia moved to Pensacola after giving her baby up. She used her severance pay from the Covington Group to buy the trailer, drained her savings, and began drinking herself into oblivion. She didn't date, didn't go out. Rachel stuck around, covering her expenses when she could. 3 years later, Ophelia was gone. Strangely, she'd left a will. She gave me the trailer and the Volvo. She barely worked after quitting her job. Took odd jobs here and there, but nothing stuck. It was like she'd given up entirely. Rachel, who clearly loved her, said Ophelia had no fight left. She mentioned me often, but never once tried to get in touch, even after Sarah passed her my number. She never reached out. Maybe that one night, what I did left a wound she could never close. And now, somehow, That pain hit me harder than ever. I stayed at Rachel's for a couple of weeks, but the atmosphere quickly became intolerable. I ended up practically giving the trailer away for next to nothing, sold it for $1, and managed to unload the Volvo for $3,000. Within 2 days, I found myself in Westchester, dropping in on Darren and Elizabeth, who I'd only recently gotten to know. At first, Nolan Whitaker resisted. He clung to denial, doing everything he could to ignore the reality closing in on him. But Darren and Elizabeth were relentless, and under their persistent pressure, his defenses eventually gave way. Nolan demanded a paternity test, and the results confirmed what everyone had quietly suspected. He was the father. With no other options and trying to salvage what was left of his pride, he reluctantly agreed to go through with the bone marrow donation. The procedure was medically successful, but the consequences in his public and private life were catastrophic. His approval numbers nosedived, and his political party replaced him with a fresh candidate just months ahead of the election. His wife filed for divorce, making sure the entire scandal played out in the spotlight. Meanwhile, Rachel and I are on the road to Dallas to visit Sarah and the grandkids. I'm not sure how long Rachel intends to stay, maybe only until someone else comes along to fill the emotional gap. For now, it feels like we're in a delicate truce, a brief lull before the next inevitable upheaval. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you?